Welcome to Discovering the Law. My name is Lucy Rivera and I am the host of this show. This program can be viewed at www.discoveringthelaw.com. Today we have a very special guest. We have Deputy Consul General of Mexico in Boston, Carlos Garrido.
Very nice to see you, Lucy, and be with you. Thank you for the invitation on behalf of Consul General Daniel Hernandez Joseph.
Thank you, and it's an honor for us to have you here. Our first question is actually, when a child is born in the United States, how can he obtain a dual citizenship?
Yes, the first thing we need to do is to establish the nationality of one of the parents. At least we need that one of the parents is of Mexican origin, Mexican born. So we identify the parent by their birth certificate, Mexican birth certificate. Then we proceed to register the child. To register the child, what we need at the consulate is their original birth certificate, their American birth certificate in this case. After that, we need to establish the identity of both parents, so they need to present IDs. We proceed with the registration. Once the child is registered, we will issue a Mexican birth certificate. So that way the child will have both nationalities.
Ah, very interesting. So in terms of having both nationalities, if a child or a person has dual nationality, when they want to return to Mexico, what should they declare?
Yes, it's important that when traveling to Mexico, if you have dual citizenship, let's say American and Mexican, it is important that if you are in the United States traveling to Mexico, you identify yourself with your Mexican passport. That is based on our laws. It is important that if you're Mexican, you identify entering your, Mexico as Mexican. But if on the other way around, when returning from Mexico to the U.S., it's important to show your U.S. passport.
Very good. I'd like to ask you about the documents. For example, for like birth certificate purposes, the apostille.
Yes.
Would you explain to us what is it, and what's the function of it and the importance?
Yes, it's an important question since Mexico and United States are members of the Convention of the Apostille. This is in order to recognize official documents from United States in Mexico in this case, or official Mexican documents in the U.S. So, for instance, a birth certificate, somebody that is born in the United States, and they want that birth certificate to be valid in Mexico, then they will need to present that birth certificate with an apostille. That is done by the Secretary of State. In the case of Massachusetts, they bring the paper there and they will put the seal on it.
Okay, so it's a seal, and it will make it valid in both countries.
Yes.
And the perfect example is a birth certificate, either here or there, because of the convention. Very interesting.
Yes, that's right. Because of that convention, yes, we recognize official documents as long as the countries are member of the convention. Yes.
And now, in the case of U.S. citizens who want to be tourists in Mexico, what's the procedure? What do they need to?
If you're a U.S. Tourist, a U.S. citizen traveling to Mexico, actually, I have a good news. You don't need a visa to enter Mexico as long as you travel with your valid passport. It is very important since we are requesting a valid passport to enter Mexico by sea. Or if you enter Mexico by land, any port of entry by land, you need to present the crossing card, which is a type of passport, but just a smaller version. It's a crossing card.
Okay. So if you enter by air, you
need the passport. That's right. Yes.
And in the cases of border towns?
Border towns, you can get a passport card. That's what it is called. And with that passport card, it's like having your regular passport, but just it's recognized along the border.
Very interesting. And how long can people be tourists in Mexico?
Yes, if you are Mexican American, let's say, with dual citizenship or nationalities, you can be in Mexico, you have no limit of time because you are considered a Mexican. If you are a foreigner or any other foreigner will get up to 6 months of permit to stay in Mexico as a tourist. It's important to point out that it's always, the immigration officer at the port of entry is the one that will have the final decision on how long could you stay in Mexico. But it could be up to 6 months.
I see. So the maximum time is 6 months, but at the port of entry, they could issue you a visitor visa to go to Disneyland for 2 weeks, or to Mexico for like Cancun spring break for a week.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Very interesting. And what about in the case of legal permanent residents who have a green card and who enter Mexico? What do they need?
Yes, they, in order to attract more tourists to Mexico, we have done some work in order to make more flexible the requirements. So if you're a holder of a green card, basically you need your passport, a valid passport, and valid green card to enter Mexico. Your round-trip ticket, obviously, and yeah, that's fairly easy.
Okay. Well, what about in the case of, say, for example, a student who has a visa to study here, for someone from India, and they want to go to Mexico for spring break?
Yes, they could go to Mexico, no problem. Also, in order to attract tourism, one of the tourism policies in order to flexibilize the traveling of people to Mexico is that they don't, as long as they present their valid passport and their valid student visa, they do not need to get a visa to enter Mexico. So we recognize the US visa granted to that specific student or that specific nationality to go to Mexico. We do have several cases like the one you mentioned. We have students, student Harvard, MIT, here traveling to Mexico just for holidays, and they present their valid visa, their passport, and they are free to go.
Okay. And what about if you don't have a valid United States visa and you want to enter Mexico?
Yes. Then they will need, these people will need to get their visa at their country of origin.
Okay.
So they will have to go to a Mexican embassy in that specific country, and they will get that visa there.
Okay. And how about our passports? Who can obtain a Mexican passport?
Yes, the passports, we issue passports to the Mexican nationals living in the United States, but also not only the residents in the United States, but I'm thinking about the tourists, the Mexican tourists that is traveling and all of a sudden, for some reason, he lost his passport. Then we can issue also emergency passports. In those cases, basically what we require is a birth certificate, an ID, one photo, passport photo size, and paying the fee. For instance, we have passports, we issue passports for 6 months or 3 months here at the consulate.
Okay, and what's the length of the passport? So how long will the expiration time?
Yes, that's in the United States and Canada. We issue the passports for up to 6 years maximum. In Mexico, if you get your passport in Mexico, you can get it for up to 10 years.
Oh.
But here at the in the consulates in the United States, we issue them for 3 or 6 years.
Okay. For our viewers, my name is Lucy Rivera, and today we are with Deputy Consul General of Mexico in Boston, Carlos Obrador, and we're learning about the visas and the ways to enter Mexico. Consul Obrador, tell us about those consular IDs. Please explain to us what they are.
Yes, and this is those are important IDs that we issued every year. We issued a lot of matricula consular is what we call in Spanish, basically the consular ID, and this is a very useful document for our nationals. Sometimes, if they don't have an ID, this ID could give them, you know, information you can get. For instance, with the consular ID, you will get your name, your date of birth,
yes,
and also your address,
okay,
which is important. In order, if you want to get, you know, to start getting services, etc., you always need to show your an ID with your address. So we give them that. They need to show a bill, for instance, electricity bill, water bill, cable bill, showing their name and their address. So
to obtain one, so to obtain one, you need the certain IDs, proof of residency somewhere. What is it? What is a consular ID?
Yes, the consular ID is basically is the same size of a regular driver's license, but it's basically a consular identification that includes a photo of yourself, your name, date of birth, and address.
And it's a way to identify somebody who doesn't have an ID?
Yeah, it could be that. And also, yeah, it's very useful. Our nationals use it a lot since it's recognized in some banks. They accept the consular ID in order for you to open a bank account. Yeah, it's valid. I forgot to mention that the consular ID is valid for up to 5 years, actually.
Oh, very good. So, Consul, please tell us, as far as passports go, what number can they call? How can they reach the people at the General Consulate of Mexico in Boston?
Yes.
Yeah, what is your phone number there?
Definitely. Our phone number, in order to make an appointment to get a passport, I encourage the people to call 1-877-639-4835. That is a call center where you call and you get your name down in a list, and so you get your passport the following day.
Oh, very good. And if people want to learn more about the Mexican consulate in Boston, what media do you have available?
Yes, we have Facebook. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/consulmex.boston. And we also have Twitter, and our Twitter address is @consulmexboston. And I would like to tell you as well our website, if I may, which is www.sre.gov.mx/Boston. And yeah, so I encourage the people traveling to Mexico or having some questions about visiting Mexico to give us a call and check our social network addresses.
You have a lot of social network connected to the in terms of visiting Mexico, how many people do you estimate come to Mexico?
Well, last year, I know that we had a record-breaking year in terms of foreign tourists visiting Mexico. We had approximately 22 million visitors. And we are hoping to get this year close to 25. So 25 million visitors.
Visitors as tourists?
Yes, flying to Mexico. Yes.
And why do they want to go to Mexico?
Yes, well, you know, Mexico, first of all, is close. We are neighbors. From Boston, we don't have a direct flight yet, but we are working to get one in the near future, a direct flight. But if you go to, normally you have a stopover in New York City or Houston or Dallas, and it's only about 5 hours away, you know, so it's close. And
beautiful beaches.
It's beautiful beaches, beautiful cities, colonial cities. So we really cater to all people, you know, wanting different interests.
Yes.
Yes, with different interests, definitely.
So it's very busy, your office. What are the services that you provide?
Yes. Well, besides the passports, visas, and consular IDs, we also issue power of attorneys. For instance, if you are Mexican living in the United States and you have, I'll give you an example. If you have a home in Mexico and you would like to sell that home, because you are here and at that moment you cannot travel to Mexico, what you do is you go to the consulate, you get a power of attorney, and then excuse me. With that power of attorney, you send it to your relative or whoever will be representing you, your lawyer, and they will take care of, you know, whatever issues you have there. But that is another example. We also have.
I know you also have the provide services, legal services to Mexican nationals and Mexican expatriates. I am familiar with a program for lawyers that are associated with you. And could you expand on those services, please?
Yes, that's a very important topic, Lucy. I'm glad you raised it. We have the consulate, a network of lawyers that we work with in order to get, on behalf of our citizens, legal advice in different issues. Could be family-related issues, legal cases, criminal cases. So we have a wonderful network of very qualified and professional lawyers like yourself.
Thank you. Well, I understand that these services are sometimes are free for the people who come, but sometimes it depends on the complication. The lawyers can charge for them.
Yes, yes, that's right. We have a fund, and we have a fund that we use in order to work with our lawyers and our nationals. Basically, they don't get to pay in those cases. The government helps them along with the lawyers.
Okay, and Deputy Consul Obrador, tell us what's the jurisdiction of your consulate office here in Boston?
Yes, it's fairly large. We cover 5 states of New England, except for Connecticut, which is looked after by our consulate in New York City. But yeah, we cover the rest of New England. So we have a very large circumscription, jurisdiction. Yeah, we have to go to Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, which is beautiful because it gives us the opportunity to help our people, our nationals in those states, but also we get to know and to learn more about the beautiful region we work and live in, which is New England.
That's right, and now you are going to be here 4 years.
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
And
how long have you been here so far?
I am 1 year so far, and our posting goes 3 to 4 years average, and then yes, as a permanent member of the Foreign Service, we're subject to be transferred every 3 to 4 years to some other places or cities or countries.
So I know you've been here just for a year, and I'm not sure if you can comment as to the differences of the Mexicans that you find in Rhode Island or New Hampshire or Maine. This is fairly new.
Yes, it is diverse indeed.
The needs and
definitely, it's depending on the state where they live and work. For instance, I'll give you an example. In Massachusetts, we have a high concentration, for obvious reasons, high concentration of students, PhDs, researchers, Mexican researchers working in these institutions. But in the case of Vermont, for example, we have farm workers in Vermont. In the case of Maine, we have workers in fisheries. So it's very diverse, very, very diverse. Workers in construction, in the case of Providence, for instance, Central Falls in Rhode Island.
Interesting.
So yeah, every state has their own particularities. And
particular needs.
that's right, in terms of jobs, yes.
And for example, in Canada, when there are people who are specialized in farm work, tell us about what type of immigration, what type of Mexican people are in Canada, what kind of jobs do they do?
Yes. Yeah, it's, I worked there for about 12 years in Canada, and I was in charge in Toronto, in our consulate in Toronto, of a particular program called the Mexican Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program. This is farm workers from Mexico going to work in the Canadian farms, and they do mostly agricultural jobs, working in the greenhouse industry, for instance, in tomatoes, cucumbers, all that, even tobacco as well, and some in the area of Niagara region, Niagara Falls. They have some very nice wineries around around that area as well. And Mexican workers work there.
Ah, interesting. What kind of visa do they have there?
Yes, in order to go to be accepted in that program, the workers need to get a working visa, and this is issued by the Canadian Embassy in Mexico. They need to get, the workers interested in getting into that program, they need to get, I mean, they need obviously to know the farm work, to have farm working experience, but also they need to be selected by, there is a process, a selecting process in Mexico.
Ah, very interesting. And so that, what happens when the visa, so they have a visa to come to work, and then the visa, and then they go back?
Yes, it's a seasonal farm work, and so they will stay for up to 8 months of the year, then they return to Mexico. But it's a very successful program since we have workers. That program started in 1974 with only 200 workers, and right now there are approximately 16,000 farm workers going with that program, which is very good since it is legal, immigration secure, and you know, there is
work successful, and it's a good model.
That's right. It's a good model, I would say. Yes.
And is as a model, would that model apply here? Would that work in the United States?
Well, I believe there is some negotiations in that aspect relating to a guest workers program, but you know, we don't get involved in local politics, so we'll let the process go their own flow and see.
Could that be the solution to immigration of farm workers? You know? Thank you, Consul Obrador. It was a pleasure to see you. For all our viewers, my name is Lucy Rivera. I am the host of Discovering the Law. This program can be viewed also at www.discoveringthelaw.com, or you can call me or email me at lucinda.rivera@discoveringthelaw.com. And today we learned about visas, about tourism to Mexico from Deputy Consul Carlos Obrador. And it was a pleasure to see you today.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Lucy.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. And thank you all for watching.